Let's be honest, have you ever tried to read biblical prophecy and just felt completely lost? It's a part of the Bible that has sparked incredible hope, for sure, but also some of the most intense debates you can imagine. Today, we're going to try to understand why and maybe find a clearer way to look at all of it. To give you an idea of just how passionate people get, let me tell you a quick story about a scholar named Dr. Marv Wilson. When he was just a young guy in his 20s teaching a class, a woman got so worried that he hadn't gone to one specific seminary that she actually called his mom to complain about it. She literally asked his mother, "What does he know about the prophets? That's the only school that teaches the prophets." It just goes to show you, the stakes can feel incredibly high for people.
So that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Why? Why does this one topic create such deep, passionate divisions? How do we get to a place with all these complicated, competing systems for understanding the future? And, probably the most important question of all, is there a better way to think about this?
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why the prophets can be so darn confusing in the first place. Then, we'll unpack the two huge schools of thought that really frame the whole debate. We'll even zoom in on that famous millennium controversy. But then, and this is key, we're going to pivot and explore a totally different starting point, a method that might just change the way you see the whole picture.
Okay, so first up, why all the confusion? Well, it turns out it's this weird mix of incredible passion and, you guessed it, a whole lot of charts.
So for more than 100 years now, you've had these two major systems kind of battling it out, each one trying to crack the code of prophecy. And this led to this explosion of incredibly detailed charts and timelines. You know the ones, trying to map out every single detail of the end times. And while that made the topic super popular, it also drew some really clear battle lines that still define the debate today.
And that brings us right to those two competing views. When you boil it all down, the entire massive debate really hinges on one single question. What is the relationship between the nation of Israel and the Christian church?
You can pretty much boil a century of debate down to these two paths. On one side, you have the dispensational view, which says Israel and the church are two separate peoples with two completely separate futures. And on the other side, you have the covenantal view, which sees the church as the new Israel, the people who spiritually fulfill all those promises made way back in the Old Testament.
So let's take a closer look at dispensationalism. Now, a lot of us know this view from books like the Left Behind series. It's really built on a super literal way of reading prophecy. So this view expects a very distinct physical future for the nation of Israel, including things like a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. It's also where we get the famous idea of a rapture, followed by a 7-year tribulation, and then a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. Okay, so the covenantal view goes down a totally different road. It sees the church as the spiritual successor to Israel. So when you read prophecies about a restored land or a kingdom, it's not talking about a physical place on a map. Instead, those promises are fulfilled symbolically in the global church. The focus here isn't so much on some future political event, but on Christ's current spiritual reign in the hearts of believers right now. As you can probably imagine, these two very different systems lead to some very different conclusions. And to see just how different, let's zoom in on one of the most famous debates of all time, the millennium. So the word millennium is pretty simple, right? It just means 1,000 years. And here's the wild part. In the entire Bible, this specific 1,000-year period is only mentioned in one single chapter, Revelation 20. But boy, has the interpretation of that one passage created a lot of disagreement. It's led to 3 distinct, very well-known positions.
So here's how it all breaks down. First, you have premillennialism, which is often tied to dispensationalism. It says Christ returns before, a literal 1,000-year reign on earth. Then there's postmillennialism, which is a bit more optimistic. It suggests the world gets better and better through the gospel, leading to this golden age, and then Christ returns. And finally, you have amillennialism. That A at the beginning means no. It argues the 1,000 years aren't literal at all, but they're a symbol for the entire church age we're living in right now.
Okay, so we've seen the systems, we've seen the debates. It can honestly feel like your only job is to just study up and pick a side. But what if that's the wrong way to even approach the question? What if there's a different way to start this whole conversation?
I mean, this question really is a game changer. Instead of starting with one of these complex, prepackaged systems and then trying to make all the Bible verses fit into it, what if we did the exact opposite? What if we just started with the text itself, using a method that lets the story unfold on its own terms? So here's that proposed method. It's basically a 3-step process. Step 1.
You start with the Old Testament, and you don't read it like it's just a warm-up for the main event. You study it on its own terms, as God's word to the people who first heard it. Step 2, you move to the New Testament, and you pay really close attention to how the apostles built on and expanded and renewed all those Old Testament ideas. And finally, step 3, you go back and reread the whole story, seeing the Old Testament through the lens of the New, and it all comes together as one continuous, unfolding narrative. And the core principle behind all this is the idea that the Bible is telling one coherent story from beginning to end. The New Testament doesn't just cancel out the Old, it builds on it. It might expand a promise to include way more people, but it's never going to contradict what God has already said.
So, what's the payoff? What happens when you actually try to read the Bible this way? Well, the result is actually pretty profound. You discover that you're not reading two separate stories. You're reading one.
This way of reading directly challenges that common idea that God had a plan A with Israel that, well, failed, and so he had to switch to a plan B with the church. Instead, this one-story view sees God's plan as this continuous thing that's been unfolding all along. The New Testament doesn't replace the Old, it expands it. It's like God is grafting new branches onto the family tree that started all the way back with Abraham.
Now, this really changes our whole perspective. It means the Old Testament isn't some obsolete plan A. It means God's promises are never just canceled, they're enlarged. The Apostle Paul even wrote that God is able to graft branches back in. So maybe the goal isn't to have every single answer perfectly locked into a chart. Maybe the goal is to stand in awe before what Paul himself called a great mystery.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. If we actually step back from the charts and the debates for a minute, and we start to see the Bible as one single unfolding story, how does that change the way you read it? Not just for clues about the future, but for what it's trying to tell us about our lives, right here and now.